This segment of the show is sponsored by Robert McKay, candidate for Alabama House of Representatives, District 30.
Hello, I'm Robert McKay, Mayor of Asheville, Alabama, and candidate for House Seat 30, covering North St. Clair and Southern Etowah County. I would love to represent you in this district. I'm a pro-business, and I believe in small government and less taxes. I can relate to all the people. I am a small business owner, drive a bus for the St. Clair school system, and can relate to all the working men and women in this district. I'm a strong believer in education. Educated people will enrich our economy. I ask for your support in the June 3rd Republican primary. Please visit my Facebook page at robertmckay.33449 for more information. This is a paid political advertisement by friends of Robert McKay. Thank you.
We're back after the break, sitting here with Kevin Moore. I said before the break we were going to talk about our sleepers of the top 25, and mine's Kentucky. Who have you got?
I was thinking maybe either Kentucky or Ole Miss. But, of course, Ole Miss was not much of a surprise because they were in the top 5 or 6 last year.
Yeah.
But because I didn't know if Ole Miss was just a fluke. But they seemed to kind of creep back in there again. And Kentucky, they had Mike. Is it Mark Stoops?
Yeah, Mark Stoops.
I get Mark mixed up. He came in, had a solid recruiting class, and of course he had to sign the Elam kid out of Kentucky, which I thought he would have gone to either Alabama, Auburn, or somewhere else. But he managed to keep. That's one thing about recruiting, keeping your athletes in state. An athlete like that is going to be kind of maybe raise some eyebrows of some other kids that are going to be juniors. That are juniors now that'll be going in to be seniors next year.
I think I saw where they signed the top 4 recruits out of Kentucky. One of them had committed to Ohio State, and he wound up going to Kentucky, and that was the first time ever that they got the top 4 or 5 recruits out of their own state to stay in state. So
exactly,
I agree.
And if they're if he's winning the state battle there, that's going to eventually turn out prosperous for him because that means he's out recruiting Bobby Petrino.
Yeah, that's right. I forgot about that. I hadn't even heard about Louisville's class. Have you?
I haven't either. They kind of I kept up with them maybe around. I was looking at a chart around the 1st of January, or no, actually it was right before Bobby was hired, and they were like maybe 30th at the time. But like I said, I hadn't seen much of them since then, so I don't know. So I don't know if that means there was some people that just didn't like Bobby Petrino, or they just came in and just was. I was going to assume that they were late to the game this year, but next year, though, I would imagine it'd be a different story.
Yeah. I think Tennessee's shocking everybody as high up as they are. They finished, 4th or 5th?
Yeah, they which I knew Butch Jones was he was known to be a good recruiter. You know, they keep doing that. They're going to eventually, if he has maybe 2 more good classes like that, I think they'll start to turn the corner for Tennessee.
Yeah. What about your sleeper? Have you got somebody that, or not a sleeper, but somebody that you thought should have been in the top 25 that after the year they've had this year?
Like I was a little shocked about Missouri. I mean, they were 13 minutes away from playing for the national championship, and they just kind of fizzled.
I agree.
Yeah.
I think mine's Nebraska. I think Nebraska's always been at least in the top 20, and since Pelini's been there, they've been outside the top 25 for a couple of years, but. This year, after they had their class signed before 11 o'clock on National Signing Day, they had their class done, and he was saying it was the closest an SEC class he'd ever had, and I just didn't see it, and I think they wound up 35th in the country. I
think we're going to start to see. I think I'll be surprised. I'll be surprised if Bob Pelini's around for the 2015 season because every time he's supposed to be known as a defensive specialist, and every time I turn around, I mean, you got some of the weaker Big 12 and weaker Pac-10 Big 10 teams putting 60 and 70 points on him.
Yeah,
and that's just I was in college when Nebraska had their heyday of 3 nationals, or when they were playing for 3 out of 4 national titles, and I love that offense that they ran, the option.
Yeah,
to me that's the best offense out there, other than possibly maybe the wing T. But of course, a lot of college teams don't run the wing T.
Yeah,
but if I was going to be in college, that'd be the offense I would run.
Yeah, another one that shocked me was USC. They're on probation right now and a loss of scholarships, and they finished 11th or 12th, and they could only sign 20 kids, and they signed 19, and they were all pretty good recruits.
Which it's kind of puzzling because that means the they either believe in Sarkisian,
Yeah.
or they're pulling a SMU and they're still doing something under the table.
Yeah, he's from the Pete Carroll stable. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And I'm hoping it has no connection to Lane Kiffin, considering he's living in Tuscaloosa right now.
Yeah. I saw Nick Saban. I can't remember who it was from ESPN that was down there talking to him that day and on their National Signing Day, but he said that they were asking him about his quarterbacks coming in, and he said, well, Lane Kiffin is there now, and he's going to coach the quarterbacks, and he's got a remarkable track record with, finishing off and really turning around quarterbacks. And I got to thinking, well, his last one was Matt Barkley, who was projected as a number one draft pick his junior year, and wound up going 95th in the draft after he decided to stay. So we'll see, I guess.
I had somebody that went to the Red Elephant Club meeting last Wednesday when they had the supposed celebration or party for recruiting party, and Coach Saban let all the assistants speak, which is something he didn't normally do. And they got Lane to speak, and they said he presented himself very well. And there were some Erklings. They're going to run, basically going to run a pro style offense, but they're going to throw some spread in there as well. So I think they're going to have like a hybrid, which which makes me wonder if they've already got that set up for Jacob Coker, because he's got the arm of A.J. McCarron, but he's got the feet of Nick Marshall.
Yeah.
So,
he's a big kid too.
Yeah,
like 6'5", 6'4", 6'5".
Yeah. So if they can somehow incorporate that, and of course, I'm assuming Jacob Coker wouldn't have transferred to Alabama unless he knew he had a good shot of starting. But still, at the same time, there's two other quarterbacks that I'm a fan of. David Cornwell, Cromwell, whatever is the kid from Oklahoma. Yeah. Normally, freshmen in Alabama don't speak, but since they were early enrollees, they didn't want them to take away from their National Signing Days like the other kids that have not showed up on campus yet, so they allowed them to talk.
Yeah.
And I was impressed with the Cornwell kid.
I heard that, or saw that Alabama and Auburn, well, it was actually, they were talking about the teams that have played in the last 5 national championships. And all of those teams, besides Notre Dame and Florida State, have been in the top 10 every year for the last 5 years in recruiting. That includes Auburn, Alabama, LSU. And how would you rank? I know Alabama was ranked number 1 in the country this year in recruiting. Do you think that the number 1 recruits they got are to fill the slots that they got open? Or
possibly. And here's my thing. I've always, and I'm not trying to be negative about recruiting. I'm sometimes I get skeptical when it comes to these 5 stars, because sometimes they get on campus and they think they're the big fish, and they're still going to be the big fish in the pond. Because Alabama supposedly had the number 1 class 3 out of the last 4 or 5 or whatever. Well, of course, now they've been in contention for the national championship every year except for 2010, and but you take somebody like Auburn. Now they finished in the top 7, and I can't remember what they finished last year.
I think they were 6 or 7.
They've been in the top 10 for the last 2 or 3 years, and they've managed with the exception of the Gene Chiswick's 2012. I think that had more to do with some assistant coaches causing strife on the staff, but because you look at what that team went 3-9 last year, and then in 2013 Gus Malzahn comes in. I mean, they're playing first year playing for the national championship, so that says they've got
basically with the same players.
Basically the same players,
and they got a few junior college recruits in last year.
And they had a pretty good signing class this time, so it's going to be interesting to see how they, if Coach Malzahn can do the same type of job this year as he in 2014 as he did in 2013, then it wouldn't surprise me to see Auburn playing in that 3 or 4 team rotation for the national championship this year.
These junior college recruits that I don't know how many Alabama got, but I know Auburn gets 4 or 5 of the top ones every year, and they got the number 1 receiver in the country as far as in the receivers class that was coming out. But he was a junior college transfer, and they got several other number 1 recruits, all from junior college. And but how do they keep these kids from getting into trouble when they get there? Because obviously they're in junior college for either their grades or because of their attitude or something. How do they change that when they get them on one of these other campuses, on a bigger campus?
I have no idea, but I bet it involves a lot of running.
I bet it does too. I know the Bassett kid, we'll talk about that a little bit later, but he's the one that got arrested with a marijuana charge down in Florida, and he was one of the top recruits out of Georgia. I'm sure there's a lot of pressure on these kids. They think they're in a big school now, and now they're high and mighty and can do anything, I guess. But that's got to be hard to get that out of their head.
Yeah, some of these kids, I guess, we're of a different generation. It's like 25 years ago, if you got caught with marijuana in the car, that was like a big deal. But now it's just like one out of every 3 kids has got that. And I heard on the radio this morning that there was a gun found in the car.
Yeah.
They don't know who it belonged to. He had 2 or 3 people in the car with him, I think. So, and some of these kids, they just, I don't know, just, and of course I tell some Alabama friends, don't make fun of Auburn now, because the last 2 or 3 times, either Alabama or Auburn, whichever school had a kid that get in trouble, within 48 hours, the other school would have to have the same thing happen. So I'd always say, I'm always hesitant to make fun or criticize the school for doing that. I mean, I was a kid for getting into trouble because the rival school, they follow the same suit. And look, and it wouldn't surprise me if Alabama had a kid within the next 48 hours get in trouble for something. It just I don't know, it just kind of, I don't know, it's amazing.
These kids get in trouble, and I know fans from both sides, from any school, any college school, your rival a kid gets in trouble or something, and they start talking about your coach and your program. You can't control those kids once they get out, once they go back home. They're not under the coach anymore. That's their parents.
Yeah, exactly.
It's their self. They're in college. They know better. We talked a little bit last week about some friends of ours that are head coaches now. John Gross is the new head coach at Jacksonville State, and Bill Clark's the new head coach at UAB. And I found it surprising that Jacksonville State wound up with the 3rd best recruiting class in the state of Alabama, just behind Alabama and Auburn. And he got one. Was EJ a 5-star recruit or 4-star recruit?
A 4-star.
And went to Jacksonville. EJ Moss from Asheville went to Asheville. Went to Jacksonville State, a 4-star recruit. And I know he has a history with John, so he knew him anyway. But that's a big pickup for them.
Also, too, I found a little information a couple weeks ago when they had their big recruiting visit. They were on the campus of Jacksonville State University was one Rock Thomas.
Oh. But
actually, and the only reason he showed up just out of respect for John, because he played for John at Oxford.
Yeah.
And they had a close relationship, and John knew that he was going to go to Auburn, but he still invited him just, maybe that little small smidgen of a chance he might change his mind to go to Jacksonville State. Plus, having Rock on campus had he was able to influence a lot of kids to go to Jacksonville State, so I'm sure that helped as well. So but it's going to be interesting to see how, because this is a new embarkment for John. He's never had to recruit. I think he recruited last year because of being an assistant, but since he's the head honcho now, all the recruiting is going to be on him. So and plus they had I think LaMichael Fanning, the player that got kicked out of Alabama, is going to be playing at Jacksonville State. So.
And they also went into Georgia. I watched his video on signing day. He was talking about all the recruits and everything, and they showed their little highlight films, and he got some really big recruits out of Georgia that you would have thought would have went to, maybe not Georgia, but Georgia Tech or Georgia Southern, or, one of the big schools, over in Georgia. And one of them was a quarterback, like the 2nd or 3rd ranked quarterback in the state of Georgia, and he came to Jacksonville. He's a spread offense guy. He runs the same offense in high school that John runs at Jacksonville. He picked up some really big recruits that day. I was surprised.
And also, too, he had a little bit of adversity on him because coming in being a head coach right there in the middle of January.
Yeah.
But also, too, Jacksonville State's APR rating was down the last couple of years because some of the things that happened under former head coach Jack Crow. So they were limited on the number of kids they could sign.
Yeah.
But I still think they ended up with 27, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, it was 27.
And but they, so I don't know if that was the included walk-ons that they invited or what, but still they did a pretty good job.
I saw where UAB too with Coach Clark. They got several recruits out of junior college too, but they were out of California. He had 2 or 3 out of California. One a big offensive lineman, and I can't remember what the other 2 positions were, but there was 3 kids from junior college in California came to UAB.
Well, Baby Bill's making an impression out there.
I don't know.
That was the nickname we always called him, Baby Bill, in high school.
Yeah, Baby Clark.
Baby Clark, yeah.
He probably wouldn't like that he heard this show right now.
Oh, I know, but if he can catch me and beat me up, he can have at me. But it's also, too, I don't think he's fully hired. He's got a full coaching staff yet as well.
I don't think he does either. I think if Coach Clark, like we talked about last week, if he can just go in there and win 6 games and get to a bowl game, there'll be parades in downtown Birmingham, I believe.
Oh, I know it. And it's amazing because, they say the coaches have their best success in year 2, which will be the 2015 season. And I saw this morning that their UAB scheduled to play Tennessee in the Titans Stadium at LP Field. So that's kind of like the big time. They'll be playing in an NFL stadium, open up the 2015 season. If they could pull upset there, that would really get the season off strong. Of course, that's not for another year and a half, another 2 years away. But that would give Coach Clark time to get his offensive, defensive plans together and strength and conditioning. I think his strength and conditioning program is going to be worth probably 2 or 3 wins.
Well, we're coming up on our break. When we come back, we'll talk about some of these recruits and the trouble they've been getting in since they've been signed. And we'll be back. Well, we hope you're enjoying the show. Hey, go by and check us out on Facebook at This Week in College Football and leave your comments or questions that you may want us to read on next week's show. Also, we'll be updating our site with stories that you may not hear us read. So go by and check us out at This Week in College Football.
Mom, Dad, parenting is nothing but preparing our children for this journey called life. Hi, this is John Kroll from Big Oak Ranch. After nearly 40 years of raising 2,000 children, we've learned that the society we live in today is trying to rob our children of their future. Our job is to give them a future and a hope. Our children are counting on us to show them the way.
Learn about John Croyle's new book, The 2-Minute Drill to Manhood, by visiting bigoak.org/manhood.